Hello everyone, welcome back to the class of macroeconomics. In today's class, we are going to talk about some topics related to international economics. So to begin with, the topics that we are going to address today are as follows. We want to talk about when involving international trade, what are the basic knowledge that you need to know about international economics. Then we want to ask, how does the value of a currency is determined? Therefore, the outline for today is as follows. We want to first talk about exchange rate, and then we are going to talk about exchange rate regimes, and then we are going to talk about foreign models about determining the exchange rate. Now we want to talk about exchange rate. The concept of exchange rate can be separated into two concepts. One is called the nominal exchange rate, the other called the real exchange rate. And we are going to talk about how to link the nominal exchange rate versus the real exchange rate. The nominal exchange rate, by definition, it is the unit of foreign currency per units of the domestic currency. You can also define it the opposite way, that is the unit of domestic currency per unit of the foreign currency. In Taiwan, that when we are talking about the exchange rate for US dollar, we are using the second definition. We say that $1 will be able to get, for example, 28 NT dollar. So we adopt a second definition when we are talking about the US dollar. For US, when they are talking about the Japanese yen, they use the first definition to talk about the exchange rate. They say that, for example, $1 will be able to get 100 yen. For that case, from the US perspective, the foreign currency is measured per unit of the domestic currency. That's the definition for the nominal exchange rate. Then let's look at the definition for the real exchange rate. The real exchange rate is the unit of foreign goods you can get in exchange for 1 unit of domestic goods. Of course, it can be also defined in the opposite way. It says that the unit of domestic goods you need to pay in exchange for 1 unit of the foreign goods. So then in here, we use the concept of goods instead of currency. So how to think about this concept? You need to think about that we need to assume that each country only produces one goods. When a country that produces only one goods, for example, US produces apples and Taiwan produces pineapples. Then when we want to eat apples, we need to pay them the pineapples and then see how many apples that we are going to get. It turns out that when we give them 1 pineapples, we will be able to get 2 apples. Then it means that the real exchange rate you are going to get will be 2. That is because in 1 unit of domestic good, that is 1 pineapples, you are going to get 2 apples, which is 2 units of the foreign goods. So then the real exchange rate need to be equal to under this case. But in reality, we know that for each country, they are not going to produce only one goods. They are going to produce many, many goods. So then the way we do to come up with the real exchange rate is that we use the price index to proxy the value of the goods that a country can produce, and then we use the price index to help us come up with the real exchange rate. So here comes the formula for how to come up with the real exchange rate. Let's define the F as foreign and D as domestic. Then we can define the formula for real exchange rate as follows. We say that the real exchange rate equal to the nominal exchange rate multiplied by the price of domestic divided by the foreign price. This price will be the price index. And then the nominal exchange rate we adopt in here is the foreign currency per unit of the domestic currency. So in here, the definition we adopt is the first one. So how to think about this formula? Well, let's see. We know that the F is the unit of the foreign currency that we are going to get when we give them 1 unit of the domestic currency. And then we can say that that is the nominal value of the foreign goods that we are going to get. So then we can divide it by the foreign price. Then that will be how many foreign goods that we are going to get. For the denominator, it is D divided by the price, domestic. That is because the D will be the per unit of domestic currency, how many foreign currency you are going to get. So D is about the domestic currency, and that's in nominal term. If you divide it by the price, then it will be the domestic currency in real term. Therefore, the numerator becomes the real foreign currency, and the denominator will be the real domestic currency. Therefore, the ratio will become how many real foreign currency we are going to get per unit of the real domestic currency. When we say it is real domestic currency, you can think about it as the goods produced domestically. So now it will be the domestic goods, and then the numerator will be the foreign goods. So that is how you think about the real exchange rate. Basically, you are measuring the unit of foreign goods in per unit of the domestic goods. And then we use the price index to help us convert the nominal exchange rate into the real exchange rate. So then, if a country's real exchange rate is rising, then what does it mean under this case? So remember, in here, our definition for the nominal exchange rate is the unit of foreign currency per units of the domestic currency. Therefore, under this definition, when the real exchange rate is rising, then it means that the foreign goods you are going to get in exchange of the domestic goods will be more. In other words, that your goods becomes more valuable because per unit of your goods produced, you are going to get more of the foreign goods. Therefore, it says that the goods you produce in your country, it becomes more expensive. You can also think it becomes more valuable relative to the goods produced by the other countries. So then how to turn this situation under the terminology of international economics? We say that when the value of a currency that increases, that is, the domestic goods become more valuable, then we say that it associates with an appreciation of the currency. So increase in value, we call it appreciation. And if it is a decrease in value, we call it an depreciation. And of course, if it is under a different regime, then we are going to turn it differently. Because when we say it is about appreciation and depreciation, the underlying assumption is that it is the market that determines the exchange rate, which means that the supply and demand determines the exchange rate. Then this exchange rate will change daily, and the government will not intervene in the foreign exchange market to affect the value of a currency. However, it doesn't happen to all the countries. For some countries, the exchange rate will be determined by the government. For that case, when there is an increase in a country's currency value, it calls the revaluation. And then when it is associated with a decrease in the value of a country's currency, then it is called devaluation. So we term it differently. So then when a country's currency is appreciated, it becomes more valuable, and therefore it will be able to exchange for their same amount of the currency. We are going to get a larger amount of the foreign currency or foreign goods. On the contrary, if the country's currency value got decreased, for example, under the floating exchange rate regime, that is the exchange rate set by the supply and demand of the market, or the devaluation of the currency, that is when the government sets an exchange rate, then the currency value will becoming less. And then so the amounts of the good they can get per unit of their own original currency will become smaller, but the foreigners will be able to buy more of their goods given the same currency value. For example, if the NT dollar got depreciated, then we need to pay a lot more. For example, an iPhone is produced or sold by a US company, and the price will be $300 each. If the exchange rate is for Taiwan, that is 1 US dollar, is in fact NTD is 25 versus the NTD that is 30, how will that affect the price we pay to get an iPhone? It turned out that the currency value that the 1 US dollar used to be able to get only 25 NT dollar, now they will be able to get 30 NT dollar. Then what it means is that the NT dollar got depreciated. Let's see what will be the impact. The $300 before the depreciation, you only need to pay 25 NT dollar per US dollar, and then you need to pay $75,000 to get an iPhone. But if it becomes $30, then now it becomes $9,000 that you need to pay to get an iPhone. Therefore, when the currency got depreciated, you need to pay more to acquire foreign goods, and the foreign goods becomes more expensive. So we claim that when a country's currency experience a decrease in value, that is called depreciation under the floating exchange rate regime, and then devaluation under the fixed exchange rate regime, we say that the imported goods becomes more expensive, and then the export becomes cheaper. It also means that the domestic produced goods becomes less expensive.